Hey you guys, welcome back to Doing the Most, the Misadventures of Entrepreneurship. And I am back for a 5th season of the show. It's been a crazy last 18 months. As I'm recording this, it is early September 2021. And it's been crazy the last year and a half with the global pandemic of COVID-19 happening. My business growing, life changing, lots of crazy things have happened. But that's why we are here on the show, Doing the Most, the Misadventures of Entrepreneurship, to talk about what's been going down, to let you guys in on the lessons, teachings, learnings that I've gained over this time. But I want to start by easing it in and just being real and honest, right? For the last couple seasons of the show, it's mostly been episodes where I'm interviewing somebody. It's me, somebody else is talking, and they're sharing their story. I'll give tidbits and bites of my experiences in comparison to their story, or not really in comparison, but more so in conversation with their story to say, hey, this is how I think about that. This, wow, that's crazy. How did you experience that? How did you embrace that? And so for this season, though, a lot of the episodes are going to be focusing on my experiences, right? For those of you who have read my book, The Art of Getting Shit Done, you may have seen some of the stories. If you follow my blog at gsdwithgeorgie.com, you'll be able to see these adventures and misadventures of entrepreneurship that I consistently go on, whether it's from being a mom, whether it's from being a student, whether it's from being a learner, teacher, human, like all the things. I share that story. So what I want to bring to the podcast for season 5 is to help me continue to get out of my own head, as well as share these experiences, because I know definitely somebody out there somewhere could benefit from me sharing my story, my experience, my insight, and how I've been able to get shit done and keep doing the most, considering all things. And when I say that I've been stuck in my head for the last 2 years, you're probably like, but you started a podcast in 2019 and you've done all these different things. And well, guess what? This is me being stuck in my head. And what that means for me personally is that I'm not able to go after all the things that I want to go after. A lot of you all might see me super busy on social media, doing this, that, this business, this program, this group. And that's great and all, and that's fun. But I mentioned this in an interview that I did the other day. Like, my ambitions are like 5 to 10 times higher than the things I actually go out there and do and get done. And one of the episodes that I have coming up for you guys this season, I'll be talking about that, right? That confidence, that strength, that ambition, and how in certain situations I've been afraid. And I've been afraid to share my story, to share my journey, to talk about what I want to do in my life, what I want to do next, right? People are always asking me this when I do another project or start another business or start another program. They're like, oh, what are you going to do next? How can I be involved? How can I support? And oftentimes I freeze up because I'm like, oh my God, now everybody's looking at me. What do I do? I don't know. Right? Like, I do know, but I don't want people to feel like, oh, she's so always trying to do all these different things and yada, 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 yada. But anyways, I want to dive into this introduction, this episode, and just to say that, the reason why I've been stuck into my head for the last 2 years, mainly from like 2018, late 2018, till a couple months ago, it's because social media will do that to you. Grief will do that to you. Depression and anxiety will do that to you. A lack of belonging and community will do that to you. Have you stuck in your head, overthinking, over anticipating, confused, not sure what you want to do next. And it definitely had a huge hold of me. And the last few months I've been very purposeful, very strategic, very much following my 4 P's framework that I've developed, which is purpose, plan, produce, and profit, which we'll talk about a little bit later too, but you can check out some content about it on my website. But this 4-part segment, just to really understand like who I am, like what am I supposed to do, what do I want to do, how do I make it happen, and how do I generate revenue from making it happen. And that's really what I've been focusing on over the last couple months. And when I say the returns, right, the returns on doing that, having a purpose, having a plan, but going into production and profiting from it has transformed my life in ways that I could have never ever imagined before. Y'all, just stay tuned. Just listen in this first episode back for season 5. But it really does get crazy. because some of these stories I'm going to share with you guys, you're going to be like, whoa, you was doing that while that was happening in the background. That's crazy. And again, I'm sharing this because I want somebody else out there that is experiencing this, because one of the things that I've learned through this journey is that, one, you're not alone. And so I'll be talking about belonging in community in just a bit, but you're not alone. And if you feel alone, there's so many things that you can do to remove that feeling that I didn't even know, right? Like I had to go out there and learn it. And so if I could help cut down somebody's process by even 5%, 10%, that's a huge help, because I know how much it negatively impacted me when I felt this way. It, blocked me from being me, essentially. So, in these last few months, I've been able to find myself again, to feel abundant again, to feel free, feel whole, to really embrace myself and my life for what it is and not just what I want it to be, right? We oftentimes get inside of our head like, oh, by this age, I should be doing this. By this income level, I should be doing this. And those are our wants, which is great to have goals and wants. But the reality is, this is what you got right now, right? How can you make that work for you? How can you look at the pot that's in front of you? How can you look at the plate that's in front of you and say, yeah, this is mine. I want to maximize this. This is mine. How can I maintain this? How can I grow this, right? That's what I want people to really be thinking about as I go through these episodes this season. And at the core of all this feeling is that I've felt like for my whole entire life, I've lived in two different worlds, two different realities, where it's when I'm with my family and my close friends, there's one version of Georgie. And I talked about this in my book a little bit. And then when I'm with my colleagues or strangers or people that I'm not as close to, there's a whole other version of Georgie. And if you're coming from underestimated group, underrepresented group, women, person of color, LGBTQ, disabilities, like various different groups that are underestimated, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have to be one way in one area and another way in another area. You have to code switch. And at first, I accepted this. Like I understood it. I knew that it was how to survive as a person. But what we and I have failed to realize is that society has tremendously transformed since code switching began, since we had to do code switching in order to be successful, in order to gain jobs, in order to gain opportunities, in order to live and exist in this world. And so now we live in a world where a lot of us have been taught to code switch. Speaking mainly of like millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers, code switching was maybe not so much baby boomers, really. So it was really Gen X and millennials that have the thickest element of code switching, where it's like you go into a space and you may not belong there. And I say baby boomers might not have any experiences as much, because back then, where there was like a higher level of segregation and separation in communities, you didn't have the chance to integrate. Like you weren't mixing with people as much. Whereas when it came to the end of baby boomers and like the Gen X, definitely like they got the thick of segregation, integration, where now schools were, you had to mix with other people. Places were diverse, right? Multicultural became a bigger thing. Interracial marriages, like a lot of that had to be what the Gen X experienced. And then as they had kids now, millennials, we were trained from a very, very young age. You have to show up in different ways. Black person, if you're in front of the cops, this is your persona. If you're in front of your work, this is your persona. If you're in front of your, your family, your friends, if you're at the cookout, this is your persona. And we have now, when we're experiencing Gen Z, where they're like, oh no, no thanks. I'm going to show up as me. Whether I'm fat, skinny, tall, short, big forehead, big butt, whatever it may be, they're showing up authentically themselves. And millennials and Gen X, we are baffled. Like, oh, you could be just the one you. So now that the world has transformed to allow us to be ourselves in or multiple different dynamics that we have to exist in, I know that I'm definitely not the only one experiencing this, where we have that misunderstanding of the communities. We have that misunderstanding of these worlds and realities. Like, how can we now, we've been conditioned to live on two different existences, two different realities, two different worlds. How can we build a bridge in between those worlds? And I specifically was struggling really, really hard with this because a lot of really high, amazing moments happened between 2018 and 2019, and a lot of low, really crappy, shitty moments happened in that time span. And it was so weird that these moments were happening in my two different worlds or realities, right? It's like life and then, you know, my personal life and my professional life. It would be something really great professionally, something really bad personally, something really bad professionally, something really great personally. And so it just felt like I was just living on these really high highs and these really low lows. And I started to question the truth of the worlds that I lived in. And what that means is that I was just like, is any of this even real? I legit said to myself, like, is any of this even real? Like, this gotta be made up, right? Like, it feels like something out of a movie. It feels like something out of a TV show. This cannot be real. I cannot be feeling like this. I cannot be experiencing this. Like, how am I gonna move? Like, I literally moved 3 times in the span of 2018 in 1 year. Yeah, in 1 year I moved 3 times. That's madness. And I had 2 small children at the time. You know, you're packing up a whole house. Did that 3 times. Changed your mailing address 3 times. Like, that's madness. And then, and again, in that same time span, right? For the first time since 2014, when I quit my full-time job working at Foot Locker and retail, this was the first time I got a full-time job. 2019. So 5 years. In 5 years, I had never had a full-time 9 to 5, like working every job. And this was like my first full-time postgraduate job. Like, so I worked at full-time at Foot Locker when I was in college, right? Everybody works in college or has their job. And I fluctuated between part-time and full-time, but I didn't have, after I graduated college, everything I did was entrepreneurial. I had my startups, I was working freelance, I was working part-time, I was doing gigs and different things, but I never got a full-time job. So because of these experiences, I had no choice but to get a full-time job. I had to have stability in my life for my family. And so for the first time in 5 years, I got a full-time job while also maintaining the family business at the time, right? Like, I'm still full-time operations on the moving company, right? And I'm also, right? So I got the full-time job, full-time operations. I'm working part-time as an account executive for a marketing agency, right? Like, all at the same time. So this dynamic, I could not comprehend what was happening. So there, and then before I got the full-time job, I was also doing gig work. So I would be doing Instacart. I was doing Instacart and I was doing TaskRabbit. So like general housekeeping on TaskRabbit. So just pull out your imaginations for me for a second, right? So imagine you start your day, drop off your kids to school, then you come back home and you're sitting on a meeting, various meetings actually, with multi-million-dollar companies. You know, that's one meeting in the morning. Then in another meeting, you are talking to, you're in a mastermind group with 6- and 7-figure earning CEOs, an accountant and senior account executives. You're one of the account executives on the call representing your organization, and you're talking about business development, growth, strategies. Then a few minutes later, you're talking to employees and contractors, letting them know what to do, coordinating jobs, talking to customers. And then you pause your day, get in the car, grab some shopping bags, and go to the local Publix to do Instacart for 2 to 3 hours. And then you have to pick up a call while you're delivering Instacart. You're hoping that somebody tips you between $5 and $10 for this trip. Like, it was just such a high fluctuation. Then the next day, you're not doing Instacart today. You're doing TaskRabbit. You're folding underwear. I kid you not. You're on these crazy high-level business calls in the morning, and by the afternoon, you are folding someone's underwear because that's how you're gonna earn your income. And I'm gonna first off say, like, there is no problem. Like, I'm the type of person, I have no problem at all doing what needs to be done in order to keep my family fed, to keep a roof over my head, to keep leveling up. I'm gonna get shit done regardless. But what I'm trying to point out here, and then also none of those roles, right? None of those roles are beneath me or I'm too good. None of that, right? Absolutely not. I did what I had to do. These are great jobs. These are jobs that people have every single day. My dilemma that I had in that experience is doing something that would be considered so high level and then considered so entry level in the same span of the same 24 hours. Like just the dynamic and transitioning from being the person in charge and a leader to the person that's just, you know, showing up and completing a task. It was just so mind-boggling to me. So I was just like, what world is real? Is the world that, like, you know, I'm succeeding, I'm doing good, I'm an account executive, I'm, you know, a freelance account executive, I am a CEO of my own startup, I'm running operations for the moving company. Like, is that the real world? Or is the real world like, I can't pay my bills, bills are stacking up, I'm swimming in debt, I need to do gig work, Instacart, TaskRabbit in order to make ends meet? Is that the real world? So this dynamic continuously clashed inside my head to the point where I'm just like, oh my God, what is real? What is fake? And it truly overwhelmed me. Like, I was just in a space of like, I don't belong. Like, I don't know where, what is real, what is not. And it sort of, like, I mentally checked out. And this time I published my podcast. I launched my podcast, published my book. So again, doing this book launch, right? People are celebrating me, you know, oh my God, you're doing so great. You published your book. Then I got to fly back home and go back through that cycle again, right? Like, it was just so mind boggling. And I just came to a point where I was just like, you know what? I have to do what I need to do in order to get my mind right, because without my mind being right, nothing else goes right. And so that's when I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come back to New York, double down. I have connections there. I know what the scenery is like. Just go back, double down, build back up, right? Start over. And that's a constant theme of my life, starting over, going fresh into a different community. And that's one of the reasons why I struggle with community and belonging, because although I've been a part of many different communities, literally, I've lived in Jamaica, I've lived in New York, I've lived in the Bronx, I've lived in Georgia, I've lived upstate, I've lived in Jersey, right? I've moved 15 times in my life, more than 15 times in my life. I went to 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, 2 colleges, right? And this, I looked at as for a time as a way that allowed me to be so diverse, to be able to connect with almost anyone that I come across, because I've lived in so many variety of communities and been interacting with so many different people. But at the same time, when somebody would ask me something as simple as, where are you from? I'd be like, oh, Baldwin, Bronx, Jamaica, right? Like, how do you even answer a question like that when you are so involved in so many different spaces, so many different communities, so many different things? And so that just overwhelms, that those 2 different worlds, those 2 different realities just consistently got me overwhelmed. And when you throw in the extreme high and low experiences that are happening, plus adding imposter syndrome to the mix, because we all got it as entrepreneurs, right? I felt like a fraud. I felt like a huge fraud. And that was something that did not sit well with me. And it took me a while to realize, but through countless hours of like reading, therapy, various things, I can now look back and say that both worlds were real. Both worlds are real. And that's just what it is. Like, they are both real. Those both realities. Again, society has evolved from the 2-track world, but it's still, it's real. And it's something that people have to experience and go through every day. I was succeeding and struggling at the same time. I'm gonna say that again because I'm still mind blown saying this sentence out loud. I was succeeding and struggling at the same exact time. How? Child, I don't know. Life, right?